The Goat House is back with updated NFL power rankings after free agency. We'll take a look at where things stand heading into the NFL draft. We'll also talk about what teams could do maybe in the draft to better their ranking before the season starts. These rankings are based off how teams' rosters currently stand here on March 19th. Things can change with the draft. The bottom tier, teams that are in the same boat for me, the Titans, who I have at 32, the Browns at 31, the Giants at 30. They all have something in common. They need a quarterback. Not just for right now, but for the future. They all could find that. They could be battling each other to find that in the NFL draft. I'll put the Titans at 32. They definitely need that quarterback still. They definitely need more receivers. The edge position is pretty rough, even though I like their interior defensive line with Simmons and Sweat. So they definitely need some more work. They did better the offensive line. How much better is it? I mean, it's starting to come together a little bit, but with the quarterback, maybe Cam Ward, that could boost this team definitely from being at the bottom. The Browns get an edge over the Tennessee Titans despite needing some of the same things. Quarterback, they even need running back. They need receivers. Offensive line, you could argue, is a little bit better, even though it was rough last year. Defensively, they have Myles Garrett. They have a pretty complete defense. Sometimes it is underwhelming, but they do have defense going for them. For the Giants, they really improved their defense, and it should be a solid one led by Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, but they add Javon Holland, Paulson Adebo to that mix. So they could be a defense that not only matches the Browns, they could actually be better if we're comparing the teams. None of these teams were going to be higher than 30. None were going to be lower than 32. Obviously, they're in the same boat. Obviously, the Giants have a new weapon from last year, like Malik Neighbors and other young talent as well. So I think they're ahead of those two teams. But again, they're all in the same boat right now heading into the NFL draft. Saints next at 29. They weren't going to be higher than 29 for me. They weren't going to be lower than 29. They were pretty much firm in that spot. They have some talent. They're a little more talented than the other three teams. The quarterback is still a question. Are they going to roll with Derek Carr? A lot of change. Bringing in Kellen Moore, bringing in Brandon Staley for defense. It's a lot different of schemes than what they've been running. So that means there's going to have to be a lot of change. So maybe some players that worked before aren't going to work. Some players are declining. Again, question at quarterback. They definitely have some more needs. So not the best team in the world right now and with the quarterback question, but they are a little bit more talented in my opinion, maybe a little bit more balanced, a little bit more complete than the other three teams in that bottom tier. Raiders at 28, Seahawks at 27, Jets at 26. These teams are in the same tier, the same boat right now, and you can label them all the same. Are their rosters actually worse technically than they were going into the offseason? With the Raiders, they actually got better at quarterback with Geno Smith, so everywhere else they got worse, it looks like on paper, but because they got better at quarterback, that could result in them winning more football games. Certainly possible. They do have star players throughout the roster, maybe the best in football at his position of Matt Crosby, Christian Wilkins, but man, they got worse at safety, they got worse at corner, they got worse at linebacker. They're getting some guys back healthy, so that could help them. Offensive line, I think, is about the same. I think it'll be fine. They still badly, maybe more now than ever, need a running back. Receivers, I still need a lot of work. They got a star tight end in Brock Bowers, but they kind of went backwards almost everywhere but quarterback. And again, we mentioned the things that kind of stayed the same. I think pass rush and offensive line. But a lot of holes in this team, but if they can fill some of that in the draft and they can better their ranking. Seahawks go from Geno to Sam Darnold. I don't mind that. They get a third-round pick with it. They make the receiver unit worse. They did not better the offense line, which was, they badly needed that. Defensively, I think around the same. I think Mike McDonald will have this defense ball. I think Patrick Graham could have his defense ball on the Raiders. I'm just going to trust that Seahawks defense a little bit more. That could be the slight edge why Seattle's over the Raiders. And then the Jets at 26, a team that technically, going from Rodgers to Fields, maybe it's the right move for the future. Are they getting worse with that, though? They had to move on from Devonta Adams. They got worse at receiver. They didn't solve any issues on the offensive line. I like some pieces that they added, right? A guy like Andre Cisco, it's a one-year deal, obviously. At safety, they move on from DJ Reed. They found replacements for some of these guys, but technically it does feel like they kind of took a step back on paper. They could play better than expected. So these three teams, another defense that I trust. Obviously, I think they'll be able to run the shit out of the football. I think they'll be very good in that category. They still have stud players on that roster. So they get a slight edge over the Seahawks and the Raiders, but those three teams are in the same boat right now, and this is where they belong post-free agency. The next group of teams that I was considering in the 23 to 25 range, nothing more, nothing worse. Panthers at 25. The Panthers were pretty dangerous at the end of last year because the offense started to get going a bit. The defense was horrendous, though. Horrendous. And they added some pieces out there. Obviously, Marik, Deshaun Wharton are a couple that stand out. They had Patrick Jones for the edge, but edge is still a big problem. Linebacker still an issue. Secondary's kind of getting carried by a couple guys. Does the offense keep rolling? They didn't better themselves at receiver, so it's hard to move them up a ton right now. Does that defense, needs a major leap. But I think them adding a little bit more consistent of a pass rusher, maybe someone else in the secondary, and maybe a legit receiver in the draft actually could boost them a bit. So that's a team that really could benefit from a solid draft and get boosted a bit. But their defense, was horrendous at the end of last year. The Jags automatically get better, maybe with better coaching, but with Trevor Lawrence coming back, you need to stay healthy. But at the same time, they move on from Kirk. It's Brian Thomas Jr. kind of carrying that receiver group. They move on from Engram. Didn't fit, but that doesn't mean they got better. They added a lot of pieces in free agency, but they're all replacing guys from before. Like, I like Hainsey. He's replacing Mitch Morse, though. Patrick McCarr is a decent sign. He's replacing a solid one in Brandon Scherff. And they add some smaller pieces in the secondary, so it's a lot of the same questions with the Jags right now. So they're a team that could be a boom or bust team, where they could be, Trevor Lawrence could kind of click and figure out, be that Trevor Lawrence we expect him to be, and they could be way better in this, or they can kind of just still be a work in progress team because again, the defense was pretty brutal last year and the offense was inconsistent due to injuries, but the defense, to me, it's around the same as what it was right now. So we'll see if they can better themselves in the draft. The Patriots defense is definitely much improved. I think that defense will be nasty. So they get a big jump, because they were at the bottom. Now they're at 23. So I gave them a big boost because that defense got a big boost. I'm a believer in Drake May, Mike Vrabel, and they could take a step because of that. I was kind of predicting myself to rank them higher in this, though. The offense it has some major, major holes there. Drake May needs some major help. The offensive line is still a big-time question, and receiver a big-time question, and even running back. And there's some maybe thought if Josh McDaniels experiments with outside zone again, so that would, I think, kind of create some more needs because they're not really built for that yet on offense. I love Drake May. Needs some more help. The offense in general on paper is pretty damn brutal right now, but the defense in the coaching kind of gives them a boost up to 23 because they weren't near that before free agency, obviously. So you're kind of banking on upside with them, and I'll put them, again, Jags might be a little more balanced. The Panthers offense maybe took a little bit more of a leap in the Patriots, but again, I think the Patriots offense has that upside factor, and the defense, got a massive, massive boost. So that would give the Pats an edge over those other two teams that were all in the same tier for me. 22 up to 19, I have these teams in the same tier where they were not going to be higher than 19. They were not going to be lower than 22. Cardinals at 22, Colts at 21, Bears at 20. They get a big jump from where they were. The Falcons at 19. For me, the Cardinals, they made their defense better. They went out and got Josh Sweat and Dalvin Tomlinson. They definitely could use some more touching up. The defense was already improving as the year went on last year under Jonathan Gannon. Offense was actually the problem. They would start games pretty well, and they would shut down. Teams would figure them out. They would shut down, super inconsistent. And the offense right now is the same. It's James Conner's an explosive player. Kyler Murray's an explosive player. Marvin Harrison Jr. can be. They need more help on the offense line, need more help at receiver. So the way I see it, they improved a little bit on defense. Great additions. They're basically the same team, though, where their strengths and weaknesses are. Some more strengths off the edge with Sweat, obviously. So they're a team, it's a team that can get a major boost from the draft. If they go out and get a receiver that can pair with Marvin Harrison Jr. and they go get another offense lineman, particularly, I'd say probably a guard, but they probably could use a couple. The pair with their additions on defense, they can get a major boost. The Colts, I think the Colts can be sneaky and win the AFC South this year. And, I haven't said that in the past. I haven't been a believer. I've kind of felt like they were staying the same. Now I think they kind of get a boost. I thought I would be ranking them a little bit higher, but other teams improved as well. I think Daniel Jones is a really good fit for Shane Steichen's offense. They really improved in the secondary with Bynum and Ward. If they can add a tight end, I know they did lose some offense linemen, but if they can add a big-time tight end, maybe a more consistent pass rusher, a linebacker, they get a boost as well. I'd watch out for them. They could win the AFC South. I think it's a possibility this year for them. The Bears get a big jump because they were one of the worst teams for a stretch of the season last year, but they definitely improved. I mean, improved by adding a coach and Ben Johnson. They improved in the interior offensive line, obviously, and then the defensive line here and there as well. They already had a pretty decent secondary, I'd say. So the team's looking a little bit closer to complete. It's just all about taking the next step. We've seen it time and time again. The Bears have a decent offseason, and it just doesn't show on the field. So they actually have to finally actually do it. I think they take that next step this year, though. Caleb Williams got to get the ball out a little bit quicker because they did improve the offensive line, but they have weapons on both sides of the ball. Under Ben Johnson, I think they could take that step, so they get a boost, and they're at 20. And the Falcons, I'll put at 19. A little bit of disappointing of an offseason so far. They have future money, so I was surprised they didn't really use that just because they didn't have any for this year. But yeah, some holes on defense. They had Leonard Floyd. They still badly need edge. They moved on from Grady Jarrett. So they've drafted a couple guys last year, but they need another guy in the interior, in my opinion. They could use another corner. They got star guys in the back end, Jesse Bates and AJ Terrell, but they can use more there. Offensively, I think they'll be fine. It's just kind of all on Penix and him continuing to improve, just like Caleb Williams, just like the other rookie quarterbacks. The reason the Falcons are at the top of this tier is explosiveness. I think they're more explosive than the other teams. I think, because Bijan being a big part of that, but having those big-time receivers, some of those other teams got good receivers as well. But that'll be the difference. I mean, having like star players like Bijan Robinson and on defense, AJ Terrell, Jesse Bates, a little bit more explosiveness and borderline star talent compared to the other teams, but there are some holes. They'll be at 19 for right now. Steelers are next at 18. They need a quarterback. I mean, if let's say they add Aaron Rodgers, which there's guys on their roster that are talking shit about Aaron Rodgers, so do they want that? But let's say, just an example, they add Aaron Rodgers, they'll get a pretty decent boost here because, I mean, the roster it's pretty. I mean, it's kind of the same, but they get a little bit better for the most part. They get a lot better at receiver, adding DK. But yeah, I mean, where did they finish as a playoff team? But there were teams sitting at home that were much better than them, obviously. So right now they kind of feel like the same team that needs a quarterback. So they're a little tougher to rank, but it's a complete roster that'll probably play well for most of the season. It feels like right now, maybe sneak in the playoffs, but they have to be worthy of being a playoff team in my mind. I think a lot of people's minds. So right now, waiting on that quarterback, kind of feel for the most part, a little better, obviously, maybe a lot better at receiver, but about the same Steelers team. They'll be at 18. Dolphins 17, Cowboys 16. These teams are absolutely in the same boat where it's all about durability. It's all about health. People kind of forget that they were beat up last year. If they're healthy, they would have won a lot more games. If they're healthy this year, they'll win a lot more games. We could talk about ranking them closer to the top 10 is a possibility if they stay healthy. So better than people give them credit for right now. The Dolphins definitely do have some holes. Comparing the Dolphins and the Cowboys, I mean, both two quarterbacks that need to stay healthy. I definitely give the Dolphins running game. I think it's a little more explosive, a little bit more of an edge led by Achane there. Offensive line, I give the edge to the Cowboys on offensive line, even though it's not as good as it once was. It was really, really good. I think they can get back on track. In terms of receivers, maybe the Dolphins a little bit, but the Cowboys have a star in CeeDee Lamb. I think he's the best of the bunch if we put all the receivers together right now. Defensively, yeah, that's where I give the Cowboys an edge. I think, having Micah Parsons, having Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland back from injury, some more holes on the Dolphins. So if we had to split hairs and split those teams up that are very much in the same boat, I'd give the edge to the Dallas Cowboys right now, but it's all about staying healthy, and they do have some more needs to fill here in the draft upcoming here. Broncos, Chargers, and Texans basically in the same boat, kind of where they left off, right? Broncos add some solid pieces on defense that could better them as long as they're healthy. Of course, that's the risk there. That's the concern. Offensively, I know they add Ingram. They're still need, running back now more than ever. And then, look at receivers. They still need more receivers. They're about the same. Can they take that next step? when they got in the playoffs, it was like, did they belong? I know they had a really good year. So which direction are they going to go? They feel like around the same where they finished here at 15. Chargers kind of the same thing. Some pieces that they add, maybe the running game could be a little better under Najee. They had Becton. The issue in that Texans playoff game, drops was a big issue. Receiver, tight end, they didn't better that at all. Defense, they lost Poona Ford. They need D-line. They need edge. So they're about the same where they still have those glaring needs, but maybe they better themselves in the running game. Texans love the defense. They even add C.J. Gardner-Johnson to that. They add a receiver in Christian Kirk, so it feels like, they're better, but offensive line is not only still a major question, maybe more of a question. That's a team, if the Texans go out and get a big-time tackle in the draft in the first round, that gives them a big boost. I think they're more legit of a team. Combined with the other additions they had. I've liked some of the trades that they've done, the hauls that they've gotten, for Tunsil trade, for an example. The Chargers, if they go out and get a big-time receiver in the draft, a tight end, maybe a defensive lineman, they can boost themselves as well. But that's where these teams belong as of right now. Bengals at 12, they're kind of staying the same right now, and they were plain and simple. They were better than some of the playoff teams that made it because their poor start. They finished the year very strong. They were better than it was kind of proven they were better than some of those teams that in the AFC that snuck into the playoffs. So going to have a top tier elite offense. Probably going to better the offensive line a little bit, but the defense is going to be brutal. It's basically staying the same right now. We'll see what happens with Hendrickson. Would get worse if you lose him. So they gotta focus on defense, maybe offensive line in the draft to make themselves what the offense deserves, like a Super Bowl contender. That offense is built to be a Super Bowl contender, but got to start a lot better. Again, this is kind of where they finished, even though they didn't make the playoffs. It's a little bit better than some other teams that were actually in the playoffs. 4 teams that were in the same tier for me: the Buccaneers at 11, the 49ers at 10, the Packers at 9, and the Commanders at 8. Bucks, I think they're a little unlucky. They kind of shot themselves in the foot to go home as early as they did. They're a pretty solid team. They got to stay sloppy free, I guess, to continue to move on. But it's a pretty solid, balanced team. The pass defense can get a little better. They add Reddick to the mix, for pass rush help, I suppose. If you like, around where they kind of finished at 11. Niners are tricky because, they get better compared to last year by default because they get healthier. At the same time, they lost a bunch of players. Decent players, solid players. They didn't absolutely need those guys going forward. Why they let them go? So you could argue they get better because of health, but they get worse because of players they lost. They have a ton of draft picks, so this is a team that really, and they have a plan. It feels like they really have a strategy. They really like this draft class, the next year draft class. It feels like so. There's a team that really could better themselves with a good draft, which is very realistic. I can boost them up quite a bit. I was kind of, before free agency, I was kind of thinking I would rank the Niners in the top 3, maybe top 4, top 5, but I thought they would have some more impact additions, so they'll stay put around this range for me. Packers at 9. I think the Packers were probably better than people gave them credit for at the end of the year last year. I think Jordan Love playing a little banged up. They played the Eagles pretty tough. The defense got better. The offense has to be more consistent. They have to get, if this team gets a legit receiver, I can give them a good boost here. They could use another defensive lineman or two as well. That can give them a boost. Just all on Jordan Love being a little more consistent. He did try to come back a little early from injury last year, so we'll see this year if that was a legitimate excuse or not. The Commanders at 8, a very tough team to rank because it's kind of fresh in our minds that they finished top 4. They finished in the NFC Championship game going home there, and they had to go against the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. So should they be top 4 because of that? But then you could argue, were they actually a top 4 team? Very impressive, heading in the right direction. We all could agree they had a little bit of luck on their side going through, even in the Bucks playoff game. You could argue the Bucks were the better team in that one, but they make the offense better, right? So I love that. Jaden Daniels should continue to get better as well. And they add Tunsil, they add Debo. Defensively, though, kind of what sent them home. Pretty bad on defense, especially bad stopping a run. It almost feels like on paper they got worse on defense right now. So that's kind of holding them back. If they could add those, off the edge, a run stuffer in the middle, a corner, if they can add those things, that could give them a boost. But again, the Niners have a lot of picks. The Packers, again, if they had a big-time receiver, that alone give them a boost. So the Commanders, trading away a lot of picks, not paying attention to the defense, they're kind of at risk of some of these teams hopping over them, in my opinion, heading into the season. So we'll see what direction the Washington Commanders go. I'm going to put the Bills firm at 7, which actually might be a little bit of a drop from where they finished at the end of the year. They got a little better here and there on their roster. I feel like for the most part, this is kind of the same team where some of the other teams we're about to talk about, I feel like they legit got better, and they're also juggernaut, or contending teams perhaps. But the Bills, yeah, big problem on defense in the end of last year. They added some pieces, but I feel like it's basically the same. They might have a bigger hole at corner now. They still have a massive hole at safety. Can they consistently get after the quarterback? They haven't been able to do that. Can they consistently stop the run? Offensively, they add Josh Palmer. Outside of that, they pretty much stay the same. So they really got to better this defense. If they can add a more consistent pass rusher, Bosa's a solid addition. Will he stay healthy? Is that the answer? But if they can add a more consistent pass rusher, somebody can help stop the run, another corner, another safety, then they can get a boost from me and be at the top tier of contender. 6 up until 4 of these teams are most definitely in the same boat for me. Wasn't going to rank them higher than 4, lower than 6. Vikings, Rams, Lions. I started with the Vikings at 4, actually, because what everyone's saying right now looks to be true. That roster after free agency is absolutely loaded. It was already a really good roster, but now it almost feels stacked in a way, if you just look at it as a whole. But they have that quarterback question. McCarthy definitely could be good. They could still add a veteran guy, but it's a lot more of a question on how good, definitely compared to the Rams and, of course, the Lions as well. But this roster could be one of the more complete ones in football. The defensive line was already number 2 stopping the run, number 4 in sacks, and they added big-time players to it. It might be the best defensive line in football. Their issue on offense line was interior. They needed to add 2 great tackles. They went and did that. So, whoever that quarterback's going to be, they're set up with, the playmakers as well. They had Jordan Mason into that mix. It's a team. It's a roster right now, but I wasn't having that 4, but then couple things here. The Rams, it's fresh in our minds that the Rams just shellacked the Vikings in a playoff game. That's a small part. I don't want to base things off the past, but that kind of just did happen. But you factor in the Rams got better. They had Devontae Adams. They bring back Jackson. Obviously, a tackle doesn't make them better, but he can continue to improve. Adding Poona Ford's a big one here. The Rams couldn't stop the run. The Rams definitely have more holes, and for sure, compared to the Vikings, looking in the secondary linebacker position, but how talented that team is in some important spots, and Matthew Stafford, he is playing at a very, very high level. That's something the Vikings don't have right now. And the Lions at 4, you almost forget the Lions got better. They had a small free agency. They got better by default because that team had some serious injuries. People almost forget that at the end of the year. They pride themselves stopping a run. And when they can't stop the run, it's not the same Lions team. And they were so beat up on the defensive line that was a problem, obviously. So they get healthy there. They get Hutchinson back off the edge. They add Roy Lopez in the interior, solid run stopper. They actually get better at corner, in my opinion. DJ Reed was my top corner, free agent. Carlton Davis, very good. Durability concerns. They add DJ Reed in the mix. I'm trying to find holes on this team. Of course, they can use another pass. They for sure need another pass rusher, for sure. Not too many holes on this team. They lost some key coaches. That could be the thing. So I thought about ranking them in the 5 or 6 spot because of that. But this team is very, very talented. I'm going to keep them at 4 for right now. Again, remember they get better by default by getting healthier here. But man, I was close to again flipping all those teams, putting the Vikings at 4. Really, when I'm talking right now, it's really I could flip the Rams and the Lions right now. That's so damn close for me. I feel pretty good about the Vikings at 6. Even though that roster is pretty crazy right now. But yeah, I felt like those teams really bettered themselves compared to a team like the Buffalo Bills, who definitely have more defensive problems at the moment, especially in the secondary. But they already had problems, stopping the run and getting after the quarterback consistently. So that's why I felt good about them at 7 at the moment. And the top 3 teams are in that same tier where they're juggernauts. They're consistently really good. We know damn well they're going to be good, right? Ravens at 3. I thought they were actually very capable of winning the Super Bowl last year. They were that good. I felt like they were getting better. They just happened to come across, get to a game where they just shot themselves in the feet over and over again. It was unfortunate. So I think they're that good. They basically stay the same, which is good enough. Very balanced, very talented, tough team to game plan for, mainly because Lamar, but Derrick Henry. They had DeAndre Hopkins to the mix, probably a receiver 3. That's pretty damn good for them. Of course, they have needs. They can use another offensive lineman. They can use an edge rusher, maybe another corner, but everybody's got needs. It's a very talented team. Got them at 3. Going to keep the Chiefs at 2. They move on from Tooney. They add a left tackle. Could add more in the draft, obviously, on the offensive line. Add a couple pieces here and there. It's just still this Patrick Mahomes-led team. They're a little healthier at receiver now. Obviously, bringing Hollywood Brown back. So, the top 2 teams still for me, top 3 at least. And the Eagles at 1, interesting one because, technically the Eagles got worse. They lost Milton Williams, big-time defensive tackle, was big time in the Super Bowl. They lost Josh Sweat, was big time for them for years, was big time in the Super Bowl. Surprisingly traded C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They opened up a hole at safety. Offensively, they lost Mekhi Becton. So technically, they might trade Dallas Goedert. We'll see what happens there. Technically, they got worse, but couple things here where they remain at 1. One, they're a team that has really good depth. They have options. They have next man up. They know how to coach him, develop him, have him play as well, whether they have him on their roster, whether they add him still or not. So just a lot of confidence with the Eagles. Still, even with those losses, still insanely, absurdly talented, right? Deserving of 1. I'm also a guy that you just won the Super Bowl. You're number 1 still. We're only in free agency. We're not at the draft yet. If a team was completely non-deserving of being 1, like they're clearly not 1, even though they just won the Super Bowl, then I wouldn't be stubborn. I wouldn't just keep them at 1. I would move them. This is most definitely not the case here, even though technically they may have got worse on paper. So I think they're just most definitely belonging at 1 still. They are the Super Bowl champions for a reason, and they're still very capable of that. But yeah, I think this was fun because as we could tell, the draft can change some things, of course. Again, we mentioned teams that have desperate needs, and that's kind of weighing them down right now. But if they fill those with some good prospects, boom, that boosts them up. And then you got a team like the Niners who are better because they're healthier, but they do have some holes, but they have a ton of draft picks, and they have a plan there. If they knock the draft out of the park, boom, they get a big-time boost as well. There's some teams, if they get that quarterback, you start with those lower tier teams, but like the teams like the Steelers or the Vikings, if you feel a little more comfortable about them and their quarterbacks, if you do, then they could get a boost, right? Mainly the Steelers there. So it's pretty interesting to look at right now. Things can change after the draft, and things could even change through training camp into the season. And when the time is right, we will kind of revisit this and all the predictions for the season as well. But we are in draft mode. I had a recent mock draft go up. We're going to start ranking some players. Obviously, I'm kind of changing the format on that. I think you guys be really excited about that. A lot of draft content to come. We have a bunch of free agency kind of grades videos on the channel from very recent here, so you can check those out as well. But that's going to do it for this one. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Please like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Goodbye.